welcome back to another episode of Not Your Mama's Midlife, where we believe that midlife is not a crisis, it's actually an awakening. Hi, I'm Tasha Davis. I'm a nurse practitioner and the owner of Downtown Hydration and Wellness in Aiken, South Carolina. But for today and for future episodes, I will be your host and your tour guide through all things perimenopause/menopause. Let's jump right in. Okay, ladies, what would you say if I told you that there are studies that show 60% of divorces are initiated by women through the ages of their 40s, 50s, or 60s? Think about that. What is happening in our 40s, 50s, and 60s that could possibly contribute to a divorce rate? Hormones, right? Perimenopause and menopause. And there are a couple of reasons that could be happening. So let's talk about some things that are going on during this time in our life that could cause strains on our relationship. So first and foremost, we are having those hormone fluctuations, right? We are having the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone fluctuating through this time, and those fluctuations can be pretty unpredictable. And estrogen doesn't just affect us physically, but it also plays on our dopamine and serotonin receptors in our brain, which causes shifts to go on, and it leads to more irritability and more mood issues. And so with the instability of our hormones and those mood shifts, that's a lot for us to handle. But guess what? It can be a lot for our partner too, right? I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes when my estrogen is really estrogening, I'm sick of my own self, right? I get on my own nerves. There are some days that I am just like, oh, good grief, Tasha. Like, what is your deal? I notice that I'm snappy. I notice that I'm, just like, whew, ready to pounce, right? And even though I recognize that about myself, and, it can feel like I'm out of control in that moment, right? It can just feel like I'm not in control of my emotions, of what's going on around me. And that's challenging to work through. But imagine being on the outside and looking in like our partners do. That's challenging for them as well. And so I want to shed a little bit of light today on the changes in relationship that can happen during perimenopause and menopause. So we know that the mood shifts, and we know the irritability, and we know, we talked about the increased anxiety that can happen as well. There's also those physical changes, right? There's physical changes. It's the hot flashes. It's the brain fog. It's the waking up in the middle of the night, which is going to lead to more daytime fatigue. And we all know what happens when we're just tired, right? We, our threshold for just nonsense and threshold for chaos and we're depleted. We are just absolutely depleted when we're not managed correctly with those hormones. Something else that could be happening is you might be having some, a hard time adjusting to your physical changes. Right? We talked last week about how our bodies are actually changing some too. And that's hard for us, right? I mean, even, if you're doing all the right things, you're eating the right foods, you're working out, you're doing, checking all the boxes, our bodies still go through a transformation during perimenopause and menopause. And that can be hard to deal with. That could be very stressful. Other physical changes could be, you could be having, some issues with vaginal dryness, which makes intimacy painful, right? I mean, the last thing we want to do is do anything that's going to cause us more pain, especially when we're already so tired anyway. Right? So, there are so many things like physically that are also going on during our midlife journey through perimenopause and menopause, that can contribute to just, not feeling like ourselves. Right? You just, I am this way. If I don't feel good in something and I'm not comfortable in it, then, that's kind of the vibe that I put out. Right? You can look at me and tell, like, if I'm wearing clothes or if I'm in an outfit and it's just, it's not hitting, I don't feel good in it. I behave differently than when I'm wearing something that I'm confident and that I look good in, then I move a little differently. And so that's kind of, a transition that we are going through as women, sometimes daily, right? Sometimes more than once a day. God forbid we go home and have to put on something nice instead of our jammies. And, then by the end of the day, we really don't like what we're putting on. And so those things weigh us down. Those things tire our brains out. And so, there are the hormonal changes, not just emotional but psychological changes that happen, as well as the physical. So we can't ignore, during perimenopause, all of these changes that are happening. And even if we ourselves kind of understand that we are experiencing these changes and what it's, what the origin is, it doesn't necessarily translate into our partners understanding that. Okay. One of one of the most elementary and fundamental things that I think that I came to understand is my husband is not a mind reader, shockingly. And bless him. He would very much want to be, especially during this transition. But he is not a mind reader. And so, what can happen with a lot of couples is, maybe we don't ourselves understand what's going on, or maybe we do and we just don't want to deal with it because it's just another thing we have to talk about. But anyway, we keep our partners in the dark, right? We don't say the thing, right? We don't communicate the way that we should with our partners so that they can come to us in a place of understanding. And I can truly attest that communication during this time with your partner is going to be the key to making it through, because it is a rocky road, right? If you're already into this perimenopausal journey, you know what I mean. If you haven't arrived there yet, buckle up, Buttercup. But there are so many changes that are happening, and our self-esteem, right? The physical changes, the emotional instability, the mood instability. For some of us, you may experience those actual physical, symptoms of pain during intercourse with your partner. And, it's important to communicate all of those things, right? We have to but sometimes we don't really realize it ourselves. And again, that's going to go back to what I have said in previous episodes. You have to look inward. You have to be able to get to a point where you know your body and you know what your body is needing in that moment, because our bodies are always talking to us. We just have to sit still a minute, pay attention, and then honor what our body's telling us it needs. But then we got to go a step further. Then we have to communicate that to our partners and let them know, hey, I've got this going on. Hey, I don't feel good in my skin right now. Hey, this isn't fitting today. I am tired, right? I was up all night, there are times where, I've just kind of capped out, like I've reached my limit, and it could have absolutely nothing to do with my spouse. But, I kind of just like try to keep it in, because what do? We push through. right? We just keep pushing. We just keep pushing. So I'm like, well, if I don't say it, it's not real. So I can just keep pushing. No, perimenopause just comes and knocks that whole theory just right to the ground. And it just forces you to say, what's going on here? What's happening? And once you kind of understand what's going on with your body, what's going on emotionally and psychologically, and you're able to then communicate with your partner. When you're communicating with your partner and you get to that place where you feel comfortable and know what's happening, and it can be very vulnerable to say the thing, right? It can be very hard for some of us, especially us, that are more in control, right? We are the doers. We are the planners. We are the get it doners, no matter what. And for a lot of us who have that personality of just taking the lead, this is a really hard part of a relationship, and just being vulnerable with ourselves and our spouse and saying, hey, this is what's going on with me, and this is what I need from you. When you get to that point that you are able to communicate with your partner, I pray that they are receptive. But as we talked about in a previous episode, sometimes people have a hard time accepting the changes that you're going through. And so if you already had a strained and challenging relationship with your partner, perimenopause, again, is just going to shine that light big and bright. And so I want to be very real and transparent with you, just so you know that there is a reason this study says 60%, right? 60% of divorces are initiated by women during the perimenopause and menopausal years. That's significant, right? Significant. And I think that sometimes we, stay in relationships that don't really serve us and serve our higher self. And again, when we get to perimenopause, it's even more challenging. And, I've said it before, with perimenopause and menopause, it really does shine a light on the things that are needed in our lives: rest, quiet, stillness, a supportive partner. And so I pray that you are in a relationship with a partner that really just needs communication from you, right? Like they're wanting to know what's going on, because a lot of times, we kind of make it about us, right? We kind of make it about ourselves. So if you are ever in a situation, whether it be a work thing or a friend thing, and the vibe was just off, default is going to be like, what's wrong with me? Like, did I do something? Right? Well, our partners experience that too. So if we seem closed off, if we seem quiet, and we're just really at a place of maybe we're being, we're looking on the inside, we're trying to figure it out for us. Well, communicate that. I mean, one of the best things that I say that I have learned to do as far as my relationship and my marriage goes is, if I am dealing with something and if I am having a hard day, it could be something very, situational. It could be something related to my children. It could be that that anxiety from that low progesterone creeping up. And again, we are worst case scenario in this head of mine, and it could be over absolutely nothing, but I'm just more quiet and I'm more closed off. The best thing that I have learned to do is, in that moment, I just look to my husband and I say, I'm going through something and it's not anything to do with you. And that has been so helpful, for our marriage. It's been so helpful for our relationship because then he's not then spiraling, right? Internally spiraling, like, what did I do? Did I do this? Did I do that? Did I not do this? Did I not do that? And it just kind of takes the guesswork out of them, right? Now, on the flip side of that, maybe it is them. Okay. So sometimes it's them, not you, right? So if it is them, then, if you're not in a place of communicating and being able to communicate effectively, then ask for a minute, right? Just ask for some space. Hey, I need to, I'm processing. And so that I love to use that. I'm processing some things. And 100% of the time, when I take that time to process, take a step back, take a minute to breathe, I'm able to then revisit whatever the issue is at a much better headspace, right? Maybe it's the next day, maybe it's later on in the same day, whatever the case may be, but just take the pause. Because again, we've got that estrogening, ladies. And some days it's rough. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to attack, right? We want to just take that time to make sure we do what we need to do in that moment for ourselves, but also for our relationship and our partner. The last thing I want people to ever think is that they have contributed something, in a negative way towards me, and they literally had nothing to do with it. So I always want to make sure that I'm communicating that with my partner and say, listen, I need to process some things, or, I'm frustrated with you about this. We'll talk about it in a bit. Give me just a few, sometimes I just need to eat, right? Sometimes I'm just hangry. And so sometimes I just need a hot bath with some Epsom salt and some magnesium and some lavender. And I just pile it on. And that usually does the trick for me. So highly recommend 10 out of 10. If you are needing something to kind of chill you out at night to help you rest and kind of calm down and stop that overthinking, just that spiral of ruminating thoughts of worst case scenario. It works like a charm for me. So recommend that as well. There are some other stresses that can also be contributing is during this time of menopause and perimenopause is we're also dealing with, a lot of us are having the empty nest, right? Our role as moms are changing during this time significantly, and we don't always handle that the best. I know I didn't. I was stressed. Girls, I was stressed. I was sad. I was anxious. Um, I was so stressed and so anxious about my oldest leaving for college that um, I had a job that I switched and started working 84 hours a week. So I would work 7A to 7P for 7 days straight. And I did that so I could then be off and available to my son to run to his rescue anytime he needed for that next 7 days. Because again, the ADHD, the jumping to conclusions, the ruminating thoughts, like I just felt like I was going to be needed. I, in that moment, needed to be needed, right? Because my role of mom was my identity. I hadn't found Tasha yet. I hadn't found me. I hadn't taken the time to figure out who I am outside of being a mom. But when I did, and got my feelings hurt a few times because I'm rushing driving that 4 hours only to be met with, yeah, so I've got some things going on, we can maybe do brunch tomorrow. Go through that a couple of times and you get real humbled real quick. Okay. So I learned that yes, my child was fine. And yes, guess what? So was I. But it was a stressful time. And, when I am stressed, it doesn't really matter. I'm just stressed. I'm in my head. I'm withdrawn. I don't like to talk about it. A lot of the times it's because I don't really know what to say. I didn't in that moment know and was able to verbalize, hey, I'm having a problem with this. There was none of that. There was no communicating that whatsoever. There was just being quiet or being snappy or being, anxiety just going through the roof, and irrational thoughts and irrational fears just kind of consuming that time of my life. And again, on this side of it, I'm thankful for it, because I hope and I pray that I'm able to help other women who are experiencing it now, and then hopefully help prevent that for happening for those that haven't gotten to that point of your life yet. But when we get to that point, again, that is such a stressful time during this midlife journey. Another possibility that could be playing a role into the decline of, just relationships is just the stress of our aging parents, right? So we, kind of we're in this, place in midlife where, we're sitting here, our kids are thriving and going and doing what they need to do, but now we have the responsibility of aging parents and taking care of them. And if you have a very close relationship with your parents, that can be a very hard thing. It's just accepting that our parents, they're not going to live forever, right? Or maybe you've already lost one parent and you're starting to see the other parent age, right? Maybe with medical and health crises. It could be maybe you're not close, and maybe you've had to now step in and be a caretaker, and it's hard to navigate that. It's hard to navigate being a caretaker if a relationship is broken, right? It's hard. And again, we don't want to say it. We don't want to say the thing because we're afraid how it's going to sound. We're afraid that it's going to make other people think we're less than. So what do? We internalize. And then we start thinking something's wrong with us, right? That's always the default. Something's wrong with us. We're resentful for having to care for our aging parents. So, that's a me problem. Well, not necessarily, because you are still going through so many changes, and your body is still, maybe you're more irritable about taking care of your parents because you haven't given your body the rest and recovery that it needs. I said on a previous podcast that once I learned to prioritize my self-care, I was able to show up as a better mom, as a better wife, as a better employee, as a better friend, because I was giving to myself first. And that's what we have to remember. I've heard this analogy, and I'll repeat it. I can't remember the first place I heard it, but I've heard it a few times, and it's so true and it resonates with me. You get on an airplane and you go through the safety, the safety talk of, if during extreme turbulence, and if we were to make a water landing, or if they're talking about the oxygen coming down, what do they say? Do put it on yourself first, right? Doesn't say oxygen falls down and you start tending to other people. Put it on yourself first. Why? Because if you aren't okay, they don't have a chance. And so I want you to think about that. If you aren't okay, nobody else stands a chance. And we as women, we're the doers, we're the get it doners. In order to get it done, in order to keep doing, we have to take care of us. Put on your oxygen mask first. And I guarantee you, once you start doing that little by little, you are going to see and you're going to feel the difference. So, what happens during your marriage with your partner and you're in the middle in the throes of perimenopause and it's hard, right? It's hard. Well, it can be hard. Absolutely. However, even though this 60% study is quite alarming to me, I'm going to flip it. I am going to flip it and find the positive because that's what I do. I would like to invite you to just think that maybe this is an opportunity to grow closer to your spouse because there's such a transition during this time. And if you allow yourself to transition into who you are, who you want to be, and you do it in a healthy way and you communicate, there's a potential for this time in your life to really bring you and your spouse closer together. Why? Because you put your oxygen mask on first. So now you're not pouring from an empty cup. You're not ready to pounce. You're not ready to, you're not walking around hangry all the time because you've eaten. You've taken care of yourself. And I'll be honest, and I will be the first one to say that perimenopause, it almost, it was a hard time in my marriage. When I first started going through it, I didn't know that the things that I was experiencing were hormone changes. I mean, looking back, it's kind of funny to me because I'm like, yeah, I did want to divorce him once a month. Let's see what was happening once a month that would have me questioning, why did I ever get married to this person? um, but now that I recognized it and I put my oxygen mask on first, I will 100% say that my relationship with my husband is better than it has ever been. Even back in our early marriage days. And it's because I'm taking care of me. And it's because I named it and I said the thing. And it's because I'm not afraid to communicate. Because at the end of the day, I know that I'm a good person and I know that my intentions are always positive. And my spouse knows that about me too. Right? And so communication is going to be such a key factor in transitioning your relationship. Also, I'll throw this out there. Men also go through a period of midlife called andropause. And we might talk about that another time, but they could also be going through something too. So during this midlife journey, it can absolutely be one of those, times in our life that's challenging with relationships, with our partners, with our children, with our parents, with our friend group. But again, there is that potential there for it to be so much better, right? So much better. And so I encourage you that if you are having a hard time in your relationship, peel the layers back. What is it really about? Is there a cycle? Because there was definitely a cycle with me. It was once a month, right? so, so I invite you to just spend some time with yourself, peel back some layers, and put on that oxygen mask. Okay? And see what area you need to just, you need to be communicating, whether it be the hormones, whether it be the physical changes in the low self-esteem or the stressors of, parenting adult children and parenting your parents, and caring for them, whatever those stressors are, just take some time for you and communicate with your partner and work together to figure out this path through perimenopause. There is one, I promise. You just have to figure it out. And I hope and I pray that this has motivated you and encouraged you, and just, validated. If you are having a hard time in your relationship right now, so many of us go through it. Okay. So you are not alone. You're not alone with relationship struggles and perimenopause. And I hope and I pray that this podcast is going to kind of let you breathe a little bit, right? If you're too scared to say the thing, you best believe that I'm going to be the one to say it. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you continue to enjoy our future episodes. As always, if you have questions or concerns, please reach out. If you are experiencing any kind of mental health crises or emotional instabilities, or you feel like your hormones are just really hormoning, please reach out to your medical provider, have the conversation with them, be very transparent, and get yourself on a path through perimenopause, because it can be so dang good, y'all. All right. I look forward to our next episode. See you guys next week. Bye.